Asterisk, you weren't protecting anything, just sitting there like furniture, the deputy had scoffed, hand already drifting toward his holster. That's what they said right before the crackle of a taser echoed through Marion City Square. They didn't know who he was, just saw a slouched old man in a sun-faded military jacket, one boot unlaced, fingers resting gently on a velvet metal case balanced in his lap. Didn't matter that it was Friday morning. Didn't matter that he came every week to read the names carved in stone. They called it loitering. But when the box he dropped cracked open and revealed the twin purple hearts, the silver star, and a photograph folded around a decades-old field citation, sealed in plastic and signed by General S.E. McConnell, the mood changed. Quickly, and by the time Arthur Gaines was helped to his feet, the air was buzzing, not from the taser anymore, but from the rumble of black SUVs speeding in from Fort Redmont. If you agree that honor doesn't expire with age, wear uniform, like and subscribe. Because what happened next, after a hero was dropped by the very people sworn to protect him, deserves to be remembered. It was just after 10 a.m. in the square, the kind of bright, unremarkable morning where sunlight danced lazily across bronze memorial plaques and pigeons shuffled between benches. Arthur was exactly where he always was on Fridays, center of the square, third bench from the statue, beneath the shadow of the bronze soldier raising a fallen comrade. He came alone. No flag, no uniform, just the same quiet presence. Brown leather boots, scuffed and sun-warped. Olive jacket with the 173rd Airborne patch nearly rubbed clean at the shoulder, and his flat wool cap tilted back slightly so the breeze could touch his temples. He walked with a stiffness born not from age, but from scar tissue that ran deeper than any X-ray could show. Every week he sat, opened the scrapbook of clippings and letters he never let the VA touch, and read the names carved in the base of the statue aloud. Quietly, not for the crowd, but for the ghosts. That morning, though, a deputy with a new badge and something to prove spotted him while doing a routine loop. Kellen Royce, early 30s, polished belt, sunglasses even in the shade, chewing on arrogance like it was regulation. He slowed when he saw Arthur. "You got a permit to be posted here?" Royce asked, too loud, chin high. Arthur looked up, expression unchanged. "No," he replied simply. "I've got a memory." That rubbed Royce the wrong way. City ordinance requires use authorization for stationary presence longer than 20 minutes, he rattled off, like this was a textbook encounter. Arthur nodded once, calmly, but didn't move, just shifted the scrapbook slightly to keep the sun off the pages. Royce sighed and stepped forward. "You can't just sit around looking sad in uniform, sir. There's a shelter 3 blocks down." The word uniform snapped something in a bystander's head, a college student named Dev, who happened to be live streaming the square for a photography project. He started recording. Arthur didn't raise his voice. "I'm not sad. I'm remembering." Royce scoffed. "What, from a bench? What did you serve?" "1 tour and a discharge." The scrapbook was open now. On one page, a grainy photo of a much younger Arthur helping hoist a wounded man over a jungle ridge. Another page, a telegram of condolence sent to his mother in '68. But Royce wasn't looking at the book. His hand was already on his belt. "Sir, last warning." The crowd murmured. A teenage boy walking by paused and looked up from his phone. A woman with a stroller slowed to a stop. Arthur reached into his satchel, not for a weapon, but for the dark blue velvet case. He rested it carefully on his lap, opened it. Royce stepped back, unholstered his taser. "Drop it. It's not a gun." Arthur's voice was steady, eyes unblinking. But that didn't stop the trigger pull. The sound was sharp, plastic click, wires flying. And Arthur collapsed like a folding chair, the case sliding from his lap and cracking open on the concrete. The purple heart rolled out first, followed by the silver star. Then the letter. Someone gasped. Dev's phone camera zoomed in. The crowd started yelling. The woman with the stroller was already dialing someone. "Are you insane?" she screamed. "He's a vet. He's got medals." He reached. Royce snapped, half panicked now, pointing down at the cracked box as if it were a live threat. But it wasn't the metal case people were reacting to. It was the paper, the letter, one that had stayed folded and sealed for 51 years. Now loose and flapping into breeze, its signature visible at the bottom. General Sarah E. McConnell, 1972, Office of Special Operations Command. And that's when things started to shift. Fast. A young man named Logan, recently back from his second tour overseas, recognized the name. He made a call to Fort Redmont. "Something just went really wrong in the square," he said. "And a name just dropped that I haven't heard since basic." No one at Fort Redmont laughed. They didn't question it. They just moved. 15 minutes later, the square fell silent as the sound of tires and boots approached. Arthur was still sitting on the curb, one hand braced on the sidewalk, bleeding slightly from the taser barbs in his back. He hadn't moved much, but he had taken the case back into his lap. When the first SUV rolled up, people didn't know what to expect. When the second showed up with military tags and 4 soldiers in dress uniforms stepped out, 2 of them generals, no one said a word. Not even Royce. General McConnell herself crossed the square. She didn't bark orders. She didn't need to. She walked directly to Arthur, saluted cleanly, and knelt. "Sir," she said, her voice firm but respectful, "we are here now." Royce was still frozen behind the yellow tape he tried to put up, but no one looked at him. Because Arthur Gaines, once labeled a loiterer, now recognized again as what he always had been, just looked up, nodded once, and said quietly, "Took you long enough." By the time General Sarah McConnell knelt in front of Arthur Gaines, cameras were everywhere, but no one dared speak. You could feel it in the air, that mix of awe and shame that creeps in when a mistake is no longer private, and the people who should have known better are surrounded by those who actually do. She saluted him again, once slow and deliberate, then once more, sharper this time, for the past. For what Arthur carried on his back long before that taser ever found him. A second SUV door opened, and out stepped Colonel Nash, his silver oak leaves gleaming beneath his chest row, eyes scanning the scene like a battlefield briefing. He had been Arthur's aide back in Cambodia, 1971, Operation Ivory Gate. The one so redacted half the files still aren't cleared. Nash didn't say a word, just walked straight to Arthur and took a knee, placing one gloved hand on his shoulder like an anchor. It wasn't for Arthur, it was for everyone else, so they'd understand. This man wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a relic. He was the reason half of them were still alive to make judgments at all. Behind them, the deputy, Royce, stood at the edge of the scene like someone realizing the fire was much bigger than the spark he struck. His radio squawked once, then went dead. The chief hadn't answered. Nobody did. Because what Arthur had carried for 50 years in silence, the medals, yes, but also the letter, the name on that envelope, wasn't a story. It was a classified operation that saved over 30 POWs, one that ended with Arthur refusing promotion because he said too many good men didn't come home to celebrate. That letter, signed by General McConnell in 1972 before she was ever on a news ticker, wasn't just a commendation. It was a standing directive. In the event of any incident involving Arthur Gaines, respond with full recognition and discretion. No one thought they'd ever need to. Until today. And now, as word spread from base to City Hall to Washington, something remarkable began to unfold. The crowd didn't just film, they shifted. People stood straighter. One father quietly removed his baseball cap and nudged his son to do the same. A mother explained what a Purple Heart meant in a whisper. And near the edge of the crowd, Logan, the veteran who called it in, raised his phone and spoke directly to the stream. This man was left for dead in the jungle twice. And today, we let a badge out of its depth drop him like he never mattered. That ends here. And with that, soldiers began unfolding a mobile stretcher, not because Arthur asked, but because the general ordered it. "We do not let commanders walk home after being wounded on U.S. soil," she said, her voice iron. Even if the war wasn't declared. Colonel Nash bit down. "I told you, sir. You whispered as Arthur was helped up. They'd remember one day." Arthur nodded once. "I didn't come to be remembered. I came for the ones who weren't. But now they were all being remembered, loudly, nationally, and permanently." And somewhere inside the silence that followed, the city realized it had misjudged a man who never asked to be seen, but had always deserved to be recognized. They never called it a ceremony, but the next morning, every flag in Marion Square flew at half-staff, and traffic around the memorial was rerouted by order of the mayor's office. Arthur Gaines never asked for a parade, but one happened anyway, not with drums and banners, but with silence, with reverence, with men and women in uniform lining the edge of the square, boots pressed together, saluting one man in a wool cap who simply sat. Again, in his usual spot. But now, the bench was different. A small plaque had been welded into the backrest overnight, reserved for Sergeant Arthur Gaines, guardian of the fallen. No announcement. No photo op. Just legacy, hammered into steel. Deputy Royce was gone, formally suspended, and under review by Internal Affairs and a military oversight committee, who made it clear this wasn't just about misconduct anymore. It was about a violation of protocol tied to a classified directive. Meanwhile, General McConnell and Colonel Nash stood on either side of Arthur as local press scrambled to shift the narrative, but Arthur didn't give a single quote. Instead, he just tapped the velvet box in his lap and said to a boy with a phone, "To show them this." Not me. This. Within 48 hours, the footage had gone viral. Veterans posted side-by-side photos of Arthur from his scrapbook and from the square, jungle to pavement, medals to muzzle, with captions that simply read, "They always say, thank you for your service." Do they mean it? Schools began reaching out to Fort Redmont to request speaker visits. The mayor's office passed a bill to designate every November 10th as Living Valor Day. And quietly, without media, a small black SUV rolled up to Arthur's house on a Wednesday evening. Inside, the Secretary of the Army. No cameras. No press. Just a conversation at a kitchen table under the faded light of a ceiling fan. Arthur told her what he told everyone. "I didn't stop being a soldier when the war ended. I just got quieter." That weekend, a new statue was approved to join the old one in the square. This time, not a charging soldier or a flag bearer, but a seated figure, boots worn, scrapbook open, head bowed slightly beneath a cap. No rifle. No medals on the chest. Just presence. Stillness. Watchfulness. The inscription at its base read Oli. Some posts are held without orders. And every Friday after that, Arthur returned, not because the city had changed, but because now, finally, it had listened. He sat, as always, on the bench beneath the new plaque. But this time, the names he read aloud were heard, not only by the ghosts, but by the living. And in that square, the silence wasn't about shame anymore. It was about respect.